The battlefield was silent, except for the whisper of metal groaning under smoke. Sergeant David Hale sat inside his Sherman, heart thundering like artillery. Two German Tigers waited ahead, giants of steel that had torn through entire battalions. Every order screamed to retreat, but Hale's instincts said otherwise. He shifted the gears into reverse. His crew stared in disbelief. What followed in the next 10 minutes would rewrite the rules of tank warfare and prove that madness and genius can share the same uniform. Before we start, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. The battlefield was silent, except for the whisper of metal groaning under smoke. Sergeant David Hale sat inside his Sherman, heart thundering like artillery. Two German Tigers waited ahead, giants of steel that had crushed entire platoons. Every instinct told him to run. Every command screamed retreat. Yet something deep within him refused. He stared through the cracked periscope, watching shadows move beyond the haze. The radio crackled with panic from nearby units. Tigers advancing. Pull back. But Hale's hand did not move. His mind saw something different, a pattern in the chaos, a rhythm in the destruction. The ground trembled as the Tigers fired, sending shock waves through the dirt. Fragments of metal rained down around the Sherman. Hale's loader, Private Owens, shouted, "We will not survive another hit, sir." But Hale's eyes stayed locked on the field. He had fought long enough to know that fear killed faster than bullets. His voice, calm yet burning with something unexplainable, cut through the smoke. "Trust me, we are not running. We are going backward." The crew froze. Backward? No training manual in the entire U.S. Army had ever suggested charging in reverse toward two Tiger tanks. But Hale was not thinking about rules anymore. He was thinking about survival through unpredictability. He jammed the lever into reverse, and the Sherman roared like a wounded beast. The tank lurched backward, its engine howling as dirt exploded beneath the treads. To the German gunners, it looked like chaos, an enemy tank caught in confusion, retreating blindly. But Hale's eyes calculated every inch. The Tigers advanced, confident and methodical, aiming to finish the kill. The Sherman's reverse movement sent dust clouds swirling, distorting visibility. Hale used the smoke as a veil. "Owens, load armor-piercing," he ordered. The loader's hands shook but obeyed. The gunner, Corporal Reeves, adjusted the turret while Hale continued reversing, maneuvering diagonally. Each second felt eternal. The first Tiger fired again. The shell screamed past, missing by inches and tearing through a burnout truck behind them. Hale felt the heat wash across his face. "Now," he said, voice steady like the ground before an earthquake. Reeves squeezed the trigger. The shell flew, striking the Tiger's track just as it rolled over a trench. Metal shrieked, and sparks exploded. The German machine jerked, immobilized, its turret twisting in agony. Hale did not stop. He kept reversing, using the sudden stop of the first Tiger as a shield against the second. "Keep loading," he yelled. Owens slammed another round into the breach. The Sherman continued to slide backward across the mud like a dancer guided by madness. The second Tiger repositioned, trying to flank. Hale turned the turret, firing again through the haze. Another direct hit. Flames erupted, painting the smoke in shades of orange and red. Inside the Sherman, the crew could barely hear their own breathing. The world outside was fire and thunder. Hale did not blink. He kept reversing, eyes locked on the periscope, brain calculating every second as if the universe itself had slowed down for him. The radio erupted with disbelief. "Who is that tank? Is that Hale? He is driving backward into the Tigers." Voices shouted, but none of it reached him. His focus was absolute. To his men, it looked insane. To the enemy, it looked like madness. But in those 10 minutes, Sergeant David Hale became something else entirely. A man who had decided that genius and insanity were sometimes the same path to victory. The echo of explosions rolled across the valley like thunder trapped between steel mountains. Inside the Sherman, the smell of burnt fuel and metal mixed with sweat and fear. Sergeant Hale gripped the control handles, his knuckles white, his heartbeat steady like a metronome in chaos. Through the cracked glass of the periscope, he saw the second Tiger repositioning, its cannon swinging like the eye of a predator. The first Tiger burned in the distance, its fire clawing toward the clouds. But Hale knew this was far from over. Tigers were never alone for long. "Reeves, rotate turret left," he commanded. "Owens, check the ammo." His voice remained calm, calculated. Outside, machine gun fire rattled like angry hornets. Mud splashed against the hull as the Sherman kept reversing, engine roaring, gears grinding under the strain. Hale's plan was not about strength. It was about rhythm, deception, and perfect timing. He had realized something few others would ever see. Reversing confused the enemy. It broke their aim, destroyed their sense of predictability. Every second the Germans hesitated meant another second his crew stayed alive. Private Owens shouted over the roar, "Sir, we are almost out of rounds." Hale's eyes flicked to the ammo rack. 3 shells left. That was all. 3 chances to end a battle that had already outlived its odds. He took a slow breath, the kind a man takes before rewriting fate. "Then we will make every shot count," he said quietly. The second Tiger fired. The blast tore through the air, missing the Sherman by inches. Dirt and fire exploded around them, shaking the ground so violently that the crew nearly lost control. Hale kept his hands firm on the levers. "Steady," he said. "Keep her straight." The tank jolted again, sliding through the mud, and Hale used the recoil to pivot slightly, adjusting the Sherman's position. He saw a flash through the smoke. The Tiger's silhouette, hulking and monstrous, pushing forward without mercy. He whispered to himself, "Come closer." The German tank commander believed the Sherman was fleeing. The Tiger advanced confidently, its barrel lowering for the final shot. Hale waited until he saw the glint of sunlight reflect off the Tiger's armor. Then his command tore through the chaos. "Fire!" Reeves pulled the trigger. The shell shot forward, slicing through smoke, hitting the Tiger's side armor at an angle that screamed defiance against the impossible. Sparks erupted, followed by a deafening crack as the shell penetrated the flank. The Tiger shuddered, its engine roaring in pain. Hale did not pause. "Load another," he yelled. Owens moved faster than thought, slamming the shell into the breech, his hands bleeding from the heat of the metal. The Tiger tried to rotate its turret, struggling against its damaged track. Hale saw the opportunity, a single heartbeat of weakness. He reversed faster, creating distance, then shouted, "Now, fire again." The Sherman's cannon blazed, and the second round smashed through the Tiger's lower hull. A burst of flame roared outward. The ground trembled as the German tank finally gave in, its crew abandoning the burning wreck as it collapsed in fire and black smoke. Silence fell, broken only by the crackling of flames and the soft hum of the Sherman's engine. The crew stared at each other, disbelief written across their faces. 2 Tiger tanks destroyed. 10 minutes. No backup, no reinforcements. Just one man's insanity that had turned into tactical brilliance. Outside, the field that had once been death itself now lay quiet. Hale removed his helmet, sweat dripping down his face, eyes reflecting the fires of victory. "We did not retreat," he whispered. "We simply changed direction." His crew laughed weakly, half in relief, half in awe. But deep down, Hale knew the battle was not about winning. It was about rewriting the limits of courage under fire. The moment of victory was fleeting, like the last breath before a storm. The Sherman crew sat in stunned silence, surrounded by the smoke and destruction of 2 dead Tigers. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and diesel, a scent that would forever haunt their memories. Inside the tank, the only sound was the faint hiss of the engine, still running, still fighting. Hale stared at the battlefield, his mind calculating, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The quiet was deceptive. He knew the Germans would regroup. Retribution was coming. "Sir," Owens said, his voice shaky, "we just took out 2 Tigers. That is impossible." Hale did not respond. He had no time for disbelief. His mind was already several steps ahead, mapping the terrain, The next move, the next fight. The fog of war hung thick around them, but Hale's focus never wavered. His crew had pulled off the impossible, but the war was not over. He had no illusions. The radio crackled to life. Unit Bravo, report. Are you still operational? The voice was filled with static, but the message was clear. The Allies needed help, and they needed it fast. The Germans were pushing hard, and there were more Tigers out there, more monsters of iron and fire waiting to take the field. Unit Bravo, this is Sergeant Hale, he replied, his voice low but steady. We have neutralized 2 Tigers. We are moving to support. His words were calculated, precise. His crew did not question him. They had learned to trust the calm in his voice, even when everything around them screamed for chaos. Owens looked back toward the wreckage of the first Tiger, now little more than a burning husk. That's not enough, is it? He asked, his voice uncertain. No, Hale said, his eyes narrowing. It is not, but we will make it enough. He shifted the Sherman into gear, and they moved again, creeping through the wreckage, back into the smoke and chaos. The ground ahead was a patchwork of fire and rubble. The tanks that had once rolled through the countryside, unstoppable, were now only shadows of their former power. The Germans would not let up. Hale knew this. He had seen it too many times. The only way to survive was to outthink them, outmaneuver them, and most importantly, never give them what they expected. The Sherman's tracks ground through the mud, turning it to slurry as the crew pressed on. Every bump in the road, every turn of the turret felt like a gamble. Every shadow in the smoke could be another enemy waiting to take a shot. The battlefield had no mercy, and neither did Hale. He was not afraid of the Tigers. He was afraid of losing his men. Commander, we are coming up on a ridge, Reeves said, adjusting the sights. There is a good position to flank from up there. Hale nodded. We will use it. Stay sharp, all of you. He knew they could not stay on the defensive for long. The Germans would push again. But this time, Hale had a plan. He would use the terrain, the trees, the smoke, everything at his disposal to make the Tigers chase shadows. They climbed the ridge slowly, the engine whining under the weight of the tank. Hale's fingers danced over the controls, his mind calculating each move like a chess player setting up for the final checkmate. As they reached the top, the ridge revealed a valley below, the road cutting through the trees like a vein in the earth. There, just ahead, was the unmistakable shape of another Tiger. It was moving slowly, carefully, as though it knew the hunt was near. Hale's grip tightened on the controls. The time had come to take the fight to the Germans, but this time they would not know where the attack would come from. Reverse, he said calmly. The crew turned toward him, eyes wide. Sir, Owens asked. I said reverse, Hale repeated. Trust me. For a moment, there was silence, then the sound of the Sherman's tracks grinding into reverse. They moved back down the ridge, carefully, using the trees for cover. The Tiger, unable to see them in the smoke, kept its focus on the road ahead. Hale could almost feel the German gunners' anticipation. He knew they expected the same old tactics. They would not be prepared for this. Ready the armor-piercing rounds, Hale ordered. The tank slowed as it moved downhill, positioning itself in a perfect line of sight. The German tank was getting closer. Stay calm, Hale whispered to himself. One shot, one kill. The crew braced for impact. They were about to reverse straight into another Tiger. But this time, it would not see them coming. The next shot would make history. The tension in the air was palpable, a quiet storm about to break. Sergeant Hale's fingers tightened around the controls, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like the heavy armor of the Sherman itself. Through the haze of smoke and destruction, the Tiger tank moved closer. It was massive, a beast of steel and death, moving slowly through the valley, unaware of the trap being set behind the trees. Hale's crew, silent and focused, knew what was coming. They were not afraid. They were ready. Hale's eyes locked on the Tiger's exposed rear. He had only one shot, only one chance to turn the odds in their favor. He could feel the weight of that moment pressing on him. If he made the wrong move, if he hesitated, it would be the end. But hesitation was not in Hale's vocabulary. Not anymore. His mind was a razor's edge, sharp and clear. "Reeves, you have a shot?" Hale asked, his voice cold, steady. "Ready, sir," came the reply, a slight tremor in the gunner's voice. It was the same voice that had fired the first shot, the one that had destroyed the first tiger, but now it was filled with a new kind of resolve. "Fire," Hale commanded. The Sherman's cannon roared to life. The shot pierced the smoke, the explosion of fire and metal echoing across the valley. For a moment, everything stopped. Time seemed to stretch out, the silence thick and suffocating. Then the tiger shuddered violently, its rear armor crumpling under the force of the shell. The German tank twisted in a desperate attempt to retaliate, but the damage was already done. It was down. The crew inside the Sherman held their breath. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the crackling of the fire from the burning wreckage of the first tiger. Hale stared through the periscope, watching the German tank struggle. The turret spun, but it was slow, sluggish. The enemy crew was scrambling. They had not expected this. They had not expected the impossible. "Load another," Hale said quietly, his eyes still locked on the crippled tank. The second tiger was not finished yet. The crew was ready. Owen slammed another round into the breech, the metal hot from the first shot. The smell of sweat and diesel filled the tank, but it no longer mattered. There was only one thing left to do. "Reeves," Hale's voice was sharp, cutting through the tension. "One more shot. This is it." The gunner nodded, a flicker of fear and determination in his eyes. "Yes, sir." The German tank attempted to reposition, but it was too late. The moment it shifted, Hale made his move. The Sherman lurched into reverse again, quickly, silently, closing the gap. The tiger's back was exposed, and the crew knew it. The second shot was already on its way. "Fire." Hale's command was final, a sentence on a doomed enemy. The cannon fired again, and the tiger exploded. The blast was immense, the sound deafening. For a split second, the entire field seemed to light up, the sky torn apart by the force of the explosion. Pieces of the German tank rained down, metal fragments scattering in all directions. The second tiger was destroyed, obliterated in a single, well-placed shot. Hale exhaled slowly, his grip still firm on the controls. The crew inside the Sherman was silent, each man lost in the moment. They had done it. 2 tigers, 1 tank, in less than 10 minutes. It was impossible. No one would believe it, but it had happened, and Hale had done it in reverse. The silence inside the tank was broken by the sound of the radio crackling again. "Unit Bravo, report," the voice said, filled with disbelief. "Did you just take out 2 tigers in under 10 minutes?" Hale's fingers moved over the controls, his voice low and steady. "Affirmative. 2 tigers down, moving to assist the Canadians." He shifted the Sherman into gear, his mind already focused on the next battle, the next challenge. They were not done yet. The battlefield was still alive with the sounds of war. But for the first time, Hale felt something that had eluded him since Normandy. The knowledge that the impossible could be done. He had rewritten the rules, and the enemy would never forget the name of the man who had defied them. As the Sherman rolled forward, its tracks grinding through the mud, the crew behind him began to relax, just for a moment. They were still alive. They were still fighting. And in the smoke of battle, they had found something that would never fade. The belief that against all odds, they could make the impossible real. For Sergeant Hale, the battle was not over. It would never be over. The world had changed that day, and so had he. The man who had once been called crazy for driving backward had become a legend. As the Sherman disappeared into the fog, moving toward the Canadian lines, the radio crackled again. This time, the voice was different. "Sergeant Hale, this is Captain Matthews. We heard the stories. The 2 tigers in reverse? That's insane." Hale smiled quietly to himself. Sometimes, he said softly, the only way forward is to go backward. The days that followed Normandy were a blur of smoke, blood, and relentless push through fields of fire. The war had taken its toll on everyone, soldiers, commanders, even the machines they rode into battle. But for Sergeant Hale, it was different. His mind replayed every moment in those 10 minutes as if they were carved into his bones. Every decision burned into his memory like a brand. But there was no time for reflection. The battle was ongoing, and the Germans were relentless. The Tigers had fallen, but the fight was far from over. Allies were scattered, units were broken, and the threat of more German tanks loomed just ahead. Hale's crew was tired, their bodies weary, but their spirits were alive with something new: belief. They knew now that they could face the impossible, that they could do what others deemed insane. And in that knowledge, they found strength. The radio crackled again. The voice on the other end was filled with urgency. Unit Bravo, report. We have incoming German armor. You're the closest. Can you assist? Hale did not hesitate. He turned to his crew, who had been waiting for his orders. We move. Now. The Sherman roared to life, its engine firing up with a guttural growl that seemed to wake the very earth beneath them. Hale felt the familiar rush in his veins, the calm in the chaos. There was no fear in him now, only focus. The crew moved quickly, getting into position, reloading, and preparing for the next fight. They knew the drill. They knew their commander. They would follow him no matter what. Hale's mind raced as he calculated their next move. The Germans had regrouped, and this time, they were not coming at them head-on. They had learned their lesson. But Hale had learned, too. He had learned that in war, nothing could be predicted. The best soldiers adapted, used their enemies' expectations against them. And that was exactly what he was going to do. The field ahead was a tangle of fire and smoke, littered with wrecked tanks and shattered stone walls. Hale scanned the horizon, searching for movement. Then, through the haze, he saw them. 3 German tanks, advancing with calculated precision, their long barrels pointing forward, ready to strike. The Tigers had returned, but Hale was not afraid. He had faced them before and survived. This time, it would be no different. Get ready, Hale said softly, his voice steady. We're not running this time. We're going to hit them where it hurts. The crew nodded, knowing what that meant. Hale's eyes locked on the lead tank, a massive Tiger moving toward them with the same slow, methodical pace as the others. But this time it would not get the chance to line up its shot. Hale had already made his decision. Reverse, he commanded. For a moment, the crew hesitated, unsure if they had heard him correctly. But Hale's calm voice reassured them. They had been here before. They knew what he was capable of. They moved into position, backing the Sherman down a narrow trail, hiding it in the shadows of the trees. They had learned from their first encounter with the Tigers. The element of surprise was their greatest weapon, and this time they would use it again. The Germans advanced, unaware of the trap that was being set. Hale watched as the Tigers rolled closer, their guns scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. He knew they would be expecting a frontal assault, a head-on charge that would make them feel secure. But Hale was never predictable. He was thinking 2, 3 for steps ahead. The lead Tiger moved into position, its turret turning to face the Sherman. It was too late. Hale's crew fired first. The round tore through the air, striking the Tiger's side armor with devastating precision. The German tank rocked back, its turret spinning wildly as the crew inside scrambled to respond. Hale did not stop. He reversed again, using the terrain to his advantage, creating distance between them and the enemy. The second Tiger tried to reposition, but it was already too slow. Hale fired again, hitting the rear armor of the second tank, causing it to erupt in flames. The third Tiger tried to advance, but it was caught in the same trap. Hale's tactics were working. The Germans had no idea what was happening. They were chasing shadows, falling into the same trap that had destroyed their comrades. Hale and his crew moved quickly, firing with deadly accuracy, using their position to their advantage. It was madness to them, but to Hale, it was strategy. He was not just reversing the tanks. He was reversing the tide of the battle. And then, just like that, it was over. The third Tiger went up in flames, its engine exploding in a burst of fire. The remaining German tanks retreated, their crews abandoning them in panic. They had never faced a tank crew like Hale's. The radio crackled once more. Unit Bravo, report. 2 Tigers down. What is your status? Hale's voice was calm, but the pride in it was undeniable. Unit Bravo is operational. We have destroyed the threat. Returning to base. The crew sat in silence, the weight of what they had just accomplished sinking in. 2 tigers had been destroyed again, not by charging headfirst, but by doing the impossible, by reversing the odds, by doing what no one else would dare to do. As they rolled back toward their base, the battlefield behind them began to calm. The smoke cleared, and for the first time in days, the sky above them seemed a little less dark. They had done it. They had survived, and they had rewritten the rules of war. Hale's thoughts drifted back to home. Nebraska, the wide-open fields, the smell of diesel, and the quiet hum of a farm tractor. His father's voice echoed in his mind. The trick is not to look back. It is to know where you're going. Hale smiled to himself, knowing that the impossible had just been achieved. And it had been achieved because they had known where they were going, even when everyone else thought they were headed in the wrong direction. When they returned to base, the radio buzzed with chatter about the 2 tigers they had destroyed. Word had spread quickly, as word of legends always does. They would not be remembered as ordinary soldiers. They would be remembered as the ones who reversed the odds, who defied the impossible. The reversers. And Hale knew one thing for sure. He would never drive forward again, not unless it was on his own terms. The legend of Sergeant Hale, the man who drove backward into the fire and won, would echo through the ranks for years to come. It would be whispered in every Allied camp, a story of courage, ingenuity, and the kind of leadership that changed the course of history. And every time someone asked how it was done, the answer would be the same. Sometimes, to go forward, you must first go backward.